Welcome back into the Sampleist for yet another fantastic review and a new release today. I'm excited to share with you Fracture Sound's String Formations. Fracture Sounds is a small developer with a rapidly growing reputation, and deservedly so, and String Formations represents one of their most ambitious projects to date. String Formations is a library devoted to the beautiful string gestures and flourishes recorded by a small chamber-sized string orchestra of violin, viola and cello. And to quote from Fracture Sounds themselves, provides the capability to extend traditional string libraries and inject a sense of nuance and humanity into your compositions. String Formations runs in Contact, including the free Contact player version 6.7 or later. It's NKS compatible and downloads at about 13.9 gigabytes. If you're quick, you might still catch the intro pricing of $99 down from the normal retail price of $149. And my thanks goes to Fracture Sounds, who have kindly made a copy of the library available for today's review. And as is always the case with the Sampleist, Fracture Sounds have had no input into the making of this video in any way. And that's important to us because we pride ourselves on transparency and integrity, so you can make the right decisions unfettered by bias. So with that said, let's dive into the beautiful world of Fracture Sounds String Formations. Hey, welcome into today's review. Welcome to String Formations. A quick little apology. Yes, I'm indeed a little croaky, a little nasally today as winter sets in down here in Australia. I picked up the dreaded lurgy. My wife had it for a little while and I thought I'd dodge that bullet. I thought I was Superman, but no, it nicked me on the way out. So here I am. So apologies in advance. But let's push through that. Let's turn our attention to today's review and string formations. String Formations is very fast becoming one of my favourite string libraries. So like many of you, for sure, I've got plenty of string libraries. So where does String Formations fit into this universe? For me personally, it fits right into my favourite wheelhouse. I love that ambient textures and gestures and flourishes that adds colour and depth and dimension to your sound, more than just a faithful reproduction of a chamber-sized string orchestra, of which String Formations is not. It's very much the former. So the flutters and some, as you can see here, some of the articulations we'll get to shortly, flutters and alternations, some glides, intense alternations, more flutters. There's a lot of nuance and colour that gets provided. It comes in 4 patches overall. There is a main unison textures, the chord textures that you see here on your screen, the additional unison textures, and some layer blends, all of which we'll get to very briefly. But from the outset, I don't intend taking you through every possible nuance, variation, or indeed articulation, because that's essentially going to be duplicating the great video that Fracture Sounds has on String Formations over on their website. Urge you to get over there when you're done here and check it out. And Marcus Warner will take you through all that detail that you will need. Today, I'm going to choose what really stood out for me as some really lovely features and how to use them. And of course, I've used them in a composition that I'll share with you a little later. So let's dive right in. As I said, we have the chordal patch, and I've started with the flutters. Now, I'm going to just labour a little bit on this one articulation just to give you an appreciation of how the engine works in principle. So this one being flutters, if you play a singular note, I'm just going to hold down a simple G. You can hear those short tremolo bursts. Adding a second note, likewise. But then when you add a further note, you'll start to hear the engine pick up samples and will trill between the notes of the chord you've chosen. Now, I'm not doing anything there other than holding down a triad. So the engine's doing its work. It's intelligently selecting the samples that it thinks will give you that color and motion through that. So that one's called flutters. Alternations is more akin to a straight sustain chord, if you like. There's some very soft, subtle motion. So again, Beautiful softness to it there, isn't there? Now, you'll also note too that the traditional mod wheel, your CC1, is attached to the dynamics, and dynamics also cycles through the different layers of the patch. As does CC11, which is your volume. So I'm moving them both together there, CC11 and the CC1. Gorgeous stuff. It's beautiful, beautiful. The glides are, well, as the name suggests, you can hear the players gliding between the transitions of the notes being held down. So this might be a good time to just introduce very briefly this interval feature, which is the heart of the engine itself. At the moment, it's set to a smart setting or an automated setting. And as you can hear there, I've effectively said I'm allowing the engine to make the decisions as to what sort of intervals it slides betweens or trills betweens as part of any patch. But you do have some control over it. You can, if you wanted to sort of focus on a minor second. So let's just go back here for a second. Is the minor second, or indeed a major second. A minor third, and a major third. So if you find the right chord, and I hope I can, beautiful. There's even a perfect fourth, and depending on the patch, a perfect fifth even. But for the most part, I'm going to focus on letting the engine do its thing. It's probably smarter than me anyway. So this one being airy flutters, again. You can hear the players trilling between the notes of the chord held down. So I'm just holding in a simple triad. This one here's a simple C major. I'm not doing anything else. Absolutely gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous. Also, a quick walkthrough of some of the other features of the engine before we get too far into it. Obviously, we've been focusing on the articulation selection, as you can do here. You do have the ability to deselect or unload any of the articulations you don't need by selecting that button here. Each of the articulations themselves has a series of cog wheels that you can use to articulate, or rather configure any particular unique part of it. So there's the volume, you can control the attack, the pan and the release. The density is actually a really nice one where, again, I'll let you have a look over on Fracture Sound's video themselves, but the density is an indicator of how dense the layers are between the flutters. You can actually have just flutters between maybe the root note and the third of your chord, or you can have some flutters between the root note, the third and the fifth, or just between the third and the fifth, or all three of them. So the more you dial up the density, the deeper or the richer, the heavier the number of layers. So you can have very sparse to quite heavy, if you like. So that's a lovely feature. And each one of them has the same on all of them. You have over here on the left the overall global settings to control things like the dynamic range. You can select the key switch range, which are the little red keys down here. You can move them up and down to your liking, a delayed release, and also some tightness if you want to control where the samples are actually instigated or initiated. Over on the right is part of anyone who's familiar with Fracture Sounds products. you'll recognize the layer mix and indeed the mic mix. So the layer mix has a series of, what would you call them? Underlying bed synth pad-like sounds to really, add some depth and color to the sounds. So if I've got, for example, our alternations, you've got the raw sound here. I'm going to just disable the raw sound. And what's left behind, which you can control the depth of, is these three features. So now with just the raw sound of the layers, gives it a lovely rich sound. Or alternatively, just using the raw samples themselves and none of the layers, you get that raw sound. So if you want that kind of really raw string sound, you have that. But just returning these back now, you have the perspective that you can wind up the sounds to be either a close or a far, if you like, which is more like a mix. So on this particular tab, close, mid and far microphones, quite self-explanatory. I won't go into there, but you can dial up a global, if you like, settings by going close sounds versus a far. And you can also vary the depth of the atmosphere intensity in each of the layers here too. So low intensity or high intensity. And of course, across the top, the four knobs that are quite self-explanatory. We mentioned the dynamics, of course, the different layers. Color is like an EQ, so you can have like a darker sound or a bright sound. One cool little tip that I saw on Marcus's video is really quite good. I think you can obviously right-click being a contact instrument and learn the CC MIDI, and I'm just going to wiggle my CC0. So now I've got the dynamics and the color being controlled at the same time. Which, if you think about it, it's actually quite a faithful representation of a real string play, because the harder they play, the stronger they play, maybe the brighter the sound. There we go. All right, I'm going to disengage it for now. There's the delay features. You can control the delay, saturation, dampening, feedback of your delay, and likewise your reverb. So let me round out this little session with a little bit of each of the articulations. The glides we referred to a little earlier, very subtle, very delicate. You can hear the transitions between each of the notes. Gorgeous. Some flowing flutters, somewhat like the airy flutters, but a little bit more distinct. Some intense alternations. There's some beautifully stunning sounds. I could play for hours just on this one patch, but we've got plenty to get through. So let's have a quick look at some main unison textures. Let's load up that patch. And as the name suggests, a lot of these articulations are all the plays playing in unison. So some really gorgeous ambient sounds. Currents is a really interesting one too. More of a stronger little pulse of flowing energy. Blooms. You can hear that swirling around more. Now, this is where it gets a little interesting too. Some of the interspersed tremolo. Like, absolutely gorgeous. What are flurries about? More tremolo. Again, that's not me doing anything. That's the sample. Beautifully recorded. Oh, it's just absolutely gorgeous. We've even got some sporadic harmonics. And I said I wasn't going to go through every articulation, and I'm not, but there's part of me that just wants to show you something because I don't want you to miss out. So here's the additional unison textures, which have got another dimension, some colour. I reckon they're gorgeous. I'm going to pick out, for example, droplets. Obviously some beautiful pizzicato and cascading formation, turbulent trems. The shivers. That icy shiveriness of a very quick trem. There's drifts which slightly go in and out of tune for that kind of quirky, weird sound. Creates tension, doesn't it? Ooh, love it. And we've got a couple of short and long swells. Let's have a quick look at the long swells. Beautiful all round. And finally, I think what I really love to get onto also is the layer blends, which is another variation on it. So it's a totally different part of the engine, or a different device, if you will. And so what layer blends, as the name suggests, is it has three different sound sources representing each of the layers that each and of themselves can blend. So just dialing this one up, we've got circulations blending into some light atmos. Sounds very much in the harmonic range. So how it works is that from each of the layers, you can choose any of the layers themselves. And let's say I have droplets here. You can choose from Divine Atmos in this particular one, and I'm just going to randomly pick a vast atmosphere here. Across the bottom, attack, delay, I beg your pardon, attack and decay, sustain and release, low pass and high pass filters, a lo-fi generator to give it some more old school, old worldy, crackling record player type sound perhaps, and obviously delay and reverb. But again, picking those three at random. And as you push the mod wheel, you activate the other layers. But of course, every such engine has this lovely random generator, which is great fun. Drifts. Oh, and also too, you can actually go up and down an octave for each of the layers themselves. Again, randomly, I'm just going to go up one here. And what do we get? I'm going to go down an octave on the keyboard. And they're drifting. You can hear it slightly going in and out here, they're drifting. All right, let's try again. And swarm of Atmos, some blooms and droplets. The droplet's been activated. Absolutely gorgeous. There's a whole video's worth of stuff just in this layer too. So a really lovely feature. So there's a whirlwind tour through the world of string formations, very quickly becoming one of my favorites. Absolutely beautifully orchestrated, beautifully played, beautifully recorded, and obviously how it's really well put together too. All right, so let's now see how it sounds in a compositional setting. Let's head on over there and have a listen. So shall we dive in and have a look around the composition itself? So I think with string formations, I absolutely adore it. It's one of these, for me, it's almost like an instrument that at the end of a hard day at work, we've had a rough day and you just want to relax, just come in, wind up some string formations and you put your hands almost anywhere and something beautifully ambient will just start to evolve. You know, you can sort of... So it's very easy to get lulled into that. And I started actually doing this composition, doing just that, just noodling around. And I found after a while myself getting a little bit frustrated with myself, nothing to do with the tool, but I found myself falling into a universe of pads on top of pads, and I thought, it's going to get a little bit too messy. So I kind of pulled back from that, and I thought, let's start with a piano. And what better piano to use in a Fracture Sounds review but the Woodchester piano itself. It is a beautifully, woody, upright piano. It's my go-to. Perfect. It's got a lovely set of. You can hear the pedal sound of the release of the keys. You can even dial up if you want to. I didn't bother in this particular occasion, but you can sort of get some sounds from the pianist himself. If you listen really carefully, you'll hear the pianist himself moving around on the stool, but I didn't bother on this occasion. So a very warm piano, worthy of a video in its own right. But having done that, I wound that up and I just noodled around again till I found a simple melody, and I started with this. That's all it was. And when I have a nice little simple melody like that, it has to be accompanied, I believe, with some lovely airy sounds. So let's bring in some airy flutters. And this particular patch from String Formations is indeed that, airy flutters of one of the patches here. I started with the Smart Interval Manager and let it do its own thing. And so what it was simply a series of notes starting on a nice G. Let me just bring in the piano again. Oh, here it comes. Actually, let's just mute the piano for a moment. So you can hear the flutters doing their things. So it provided us with a nice drone to start with, and having the piano move in. And then I wanted to add an instance of the unison main with the airy sustains. And over the top of it, I mirrored the sort of downward melody path of the piano itself. And there's G up here. So it provides like a strong, let me just mute it, singular note to hold all the way down, while its companion, the airy flutters, did its work underneath. Here's your piano. And then we just have a bit of a gap, build to crescendo, and we enter into the main frame. And the main frame, ably supported, I won't go into too much detail, with some bass drum hits and cymbal swells. I've also put in a film bass, which is like a long synthesizer bass. Provides a really lovely, deep, rich bottom end, just to provide that stronger bed of bass resonance. So it's doing its thing down there. And when I came into that slight crescendo, you can hear a more full-bodied Woodchester playing some chords. And the chords aren't terribly sophisticated, but they're nice. All they are, I thought I had the chord symbols there, I don't. But just referring here to the moment to give you an insight, the chords are sort of a C on E, going back to a C, moving into a D on F sharp, into a B minor 7, finishing on a C major 7, then coming back. So a nice cycling 4-bar phrase. So that's what the pianos are doing. And then once the pianos come in, I've put on top here, to add some depth, an instance of the String Formations layer blends. Now this layer blends, I think what I did was I started with the default one. I play with it, sound lovely. I hit the random button and then boom, oh yeah, I like that. Having done so, in Contact, I saved it as a snapshot, gave it a name, and in my case, not very creatively, I just called it layer blend pad number 1. So that means I could save the settings that the random engine generated for me to bring it up for later. I quite like that sound. And what its role is in this particular piece, it's providing that sort of lovely bed sound. And there's some slight movement there too. Now, did I give it some automation? Yeah, I did. And the automation you can see being played out here on the CC1, moving up and down through the layers. So it's essentially a drone bed to provide the bass. So returning momentarily, and we have moving along nicely. Let's just get rid of the automation. The variation I brought in here, I took a singular note, a D. I'm still in with this airy flutters patch, but what I've done is I've automated it so it would switch over from the smart setting into the major settings. So the intervals played here is just a nice little trill between a major second. So if I isolate it, you will get hear that little flutter? There we go. Just adding a little bit of motion, so I thought that was a nice little touch. And if you listen closely, you'll hear it as it comes in here. There it is, a little bit of motion. And now we're building up into a slight change. Crescendo. Okay, and so what are we doing here? Obviously some percussion I've brought in, some swells. But I've also introduced yet another Fracture Sounds instrument, the beautiful Hemisphere guitars. Again, another beautiful instrument worthy of a video in its own right. I have it here playing a simple arpeggiated sequence to provide a crisp, sort of clean guitar sound. So again, isolating that. The Hemisphere guitar comes in and it plays. Gorgeous sound. So providing some sort of arpeggiated melodic support in the context of everything gives you the other strings have been brought in here. Just kill that. We've got some more string circulations kicking in here to provide more depth. The circulations sound gorgeous. As the name suggests, little circular movements. Quickly just isolate that for you. Very subtle. Providing that bed. There's the soprano notes over the top of it. Providing a high end sort of melodic, well, not quite melodic, it's more harmonic. Got some pads going on. And so all the string formations on their own for this part, a nice warm bed of motion in the strings. Bringing it all together. Again, coming out to a nice big crescendo. And then tapering off into some cascading triplets. So that wraps up today's walkthrough of the composition. I hope you got some value out of it. I absolutely adored playing with string formations and creating this piece. I hope you enjoyed listening to it too. Okay, so let's move over to our next section. I'll give you my final thoughts on Fracture Sound's string formations, and then we'll wrap up today's video. In a world of seemingly endless string libraries, Fracture Sounds has produced a rare gem that not only suggests to you that you need to check it out, but rather it demands that you do. It's a beautifully crafted concept that of introducing subtle motion into your string parts in an intelligent and natural sounding manner. Remember, these aren't phrases, they are genuine notes being played by a string orchestra, but with the intelligence to sprinkle the right flourishes and adornments in at the right place. They don't sound static and repetitious, but dynamic, alive, and intuitive. I think Fracture Sounds are taking on the big boys such as Spitfire Audio, of whom I've been a massive fan for a very long time. I have more of their products than any sane human should. I used to hit refresh on my browser every few seconds waiting for the next Spitfire release. Fracture Sounds has me now doing that on their site. And this is sacrilegious for me to say, but given the quality of production and the intro price point of $99 and even at its retail price of $149, it's a far superior offering than many Spitfire offerings ever were. If I had an American or a Britain's Got Talent like buzzer right now, I'd flood your screen with an explosion of golden glitter. String Formations is a genuine 5 stars. And that's a wrap for our video today. As always, many thanks to you for spending some time with me today to explore Fracture Sound's string formations. On the way out, you can help the video by giving it a like to share the love with other musicians just like you and me. Be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell, and you'll be fully armed and at the forefront of the latest news and reviews from the world of virtual instruments. This has been Greg Revell signing off for the Sampleist, and as always, wishing you all the best on your journey to find your sounds and find your soul. See you on the next one.